High-tech and low-life. Technological progress, societal regress. This is Cyberpunk. From Blade Runner to Edgerunners, the genre has become a mainstay of popular culture over the years and recently enjoyed a resurgence thanks to releases like Cyberpunk 2077 and its Netflix adaptation. I wanted to explore the cyberpunk genre's influence on cartoons and animation, and if you follow this channel, you will know I tend to focus on 20th century Western animation, particularly Saturday morning cartoons. But it's impossible to talk about the genre in animation without referencing the early, groundbreaking Japanese animated works from the 1980s and their influence on later anime productions, as well as on Western animation and the cyberpunk genre as a whole. You're watching Toon Raider, and today we're going back to the neon-lit 80s and revisiting the pioneering wave of Japanese cyberpunk anime, as well as the genre's influence on Saturday morning cartoons. Cyberpunk is a subgenre of science fiction, and while it differs between the East and the West, cyberpunk usually centers around themes of high-tech and low-life, featuring Earth in the not-so-distant future in either a dystopian or post-apocalyptic state, while juxtaposing technological advancement with societal decay. Cyberpunk in the West has its roots in new wave science fiction literature of the 1960s and 1970s, as well as later graphic novels like Judge Dredd or big-screen blockbusters like Blade Runner. In contrast, Japanese cyberpunk has its origins in both underground films and the punk music scene, which arose from the Japanese punk subculture in the late 1970s, as well as Japanese comic books and graphic novels, also known as manga, many of which were later adapted into anime. One of the earliest and probably the most influential Japanese cyberpunk works is widely considered to be Akira, a 1982 Japanese post-apocalyptic manga series written and illustrated by Katsuhiro Otomo. Set in a post-apocalyptic and futuristic Neo-Tokyo, more than 3 decades after a mysterious explosion destroyed the city, the story centers around a teenage biker gang leader who, with the help of others, attempts to prevent his mentally unstable childhood friend from using his volatile and destructive telekinetic abilities to ravage the city and awaken a mysterious entity with powerful psychic abilities named Akira. A wave of similar manga publications would follow over the next few years, many of which would later be adapted into original video animations, or OVAs for short. The 1983 manga series Black Magic was later adapted into an OVA in 1986 called Black Magic M66, which was loosely based on one chapter from the manga series and centered around the efforts of a female journalist trying to save a young girl from an out-of-control military android created by the girl's grandfather. Appleseed merged elements of the cyberpunk and mecha genres together with politics, philosophy, and sociology, and tells the story of 2 former SWAT members of the LAPD as they are tasked with protecting a dystopian city from both foreign and domestic threats in the 22nd century. The gritty, low-life elements of the cyberpunk genre were often borrowed from the film noir and neo-noir genres. Cyberpunk can sometimes be thought of as film noir set in the future, and a good example of this was Goku Midnight Eye, which featured a noir-style detective who is fitted with a cybernetic eye implant which controls a microcomputer terminal connected to every computer and database in the world, and in the year 2014, the entire world is controlled by computers. Megazone 23 was later adapted into Robotech the movie for Western audiences and follows a delinquent motorcyclist whose possession of a government prototype bike leads him to discover dark truths about the city he lives in. The film's concept of a simulated reality has drawn comparisons to later films, including Dark City and the Matrix trilogy. These films paved the way for the 1988 anime adaptation of Akira, a breathtaking masterpiece directed by the manga series creator Otomo himself. The film shortened the plot considerably but still retained many of the manga's primary characters and plot elements alongside additional scenes, settings, and motifs, and was immediately hailed as a masterpiece on both sides of the Pacific. Akira has since been widely regarded as the greatest and most iconic anime film ever made, and went on to influence many similar anime works like Bubblegum Crisis and the iconic Ghost in the Shell. Akira would also spark an unprecedented interest in Japanese animation in the West, while also going on to have untold influence on Western animation, as well as the science fiction and cyberpunk genres as a whole. The cyberpunk genre may be visually and aesthetically appealing, but its grim themes of high-tech, low-life and dystopian futures meant it was always a harder sell in the West due to children being the perceived target audience of animation, in contrast to Japan. But cyberpunk's booming popularity in the 1980s meant its influence was felt everywhere, including Saturday morning cartoons. Perhaps the first Western cartoon to use cyberpunk motifs was the science fiction animated series Centurions, which paid homage to the cyberpunk genre in the 1986 episode Zone Dancer, and borrowed elements from Blade Runner and Neuromancer, both hugely influential works. The word cyberpunk is even used in the dialogue, and in addition, one of the guest star characters was a computer hacker named Gibson, a shout out to writer William Gibson, who is widely credited with pioneering the cyberpunk genre. In October 1988, Deke Animation City released an animated cop show for kids, simply named C.O.P.S, later renamed CyberCops to avoid confusion with the reality show. Set in the year 2020, the series focused on a team of highly trained police officers, the Central Organization of Police Specialists, or C.O.P.S for short, tasked with protecting the fictional Empire City from a perpetual crime wave led by the big boss Brandon Babel and his gang of crooks. Each episode revolved around a different crime taking place somewhere in the gritty urban landscape, and futuristic technology played a central role throughout the series, with either some of the members of C.O.P.S being equipped with futuristic gadgets, or the criminals making use of technology to aid their crimes. C.O.P.S is perhaps best remembered for having the catchiest theme song in the history of Saturday morning cartoons, bar none, but it should be remembered for a lot more. The series was also an interesting blend of both film noir and cyberpunk elements, and also dealt with contemporary societal issues, such as drug use, while also introducing to a younger audience the challenges of technological development, like in the episode The Case of the Bogus Justice Machines, which featured the cops battling against being replaced by a new brand of crime-fighting robots who had been manipulated by a corrupt congressman in league with organized crime. The series generally depicted the year 2020 in a positive light, imagining a more socially progressive society, with the President of the United States being an African-American woman, for example, but still imagined crime getting progressively worse and criminals becoming more sophisticated with the further rise of technology, predicting that law enforcement would be playing catch-up to organized crime. The series was directed by future Batman the Animated Series director Kevin Altieri, while lead character design was handled by Korean animator Peter Chung, the creator and director behind Aeon Flux, who also served as the lead character designer on Phantom 2040, a series we will get to later. 1 month after the debut of C.O.P.S saw the debut of another futuristic crime-fighting cartoon, RoboCop the Animated Series, based on the movie RoboCop, which debuted the previous year. Set in the not-so-distant future and following the basic premise of the movie, Officer Alex Murphy is wounded in the line of duty and is fitted with bulletproof titanium robotic parts to become RoboCop, while together with his partner Anne Lewis fights to save the city of Old Detroit from assorted rogue elements, while at times facing resistance from within his own ranks, and on occasion even battles to reclaim aspects of his humanity. The show is set in a slightly alternate continuity to the movie and made a number of changes to the RoboCop universe to make it more appropriate for younger viewers, including replacing bullets with laser weapons, as well as updating RoboCop's capabilities. RoboCop the Animated Series was cyberpunk to its core, and by featuring standard cyberpunk themes, can be considered the first true Western animated series in the genre. Unapologetically grim and almost entirely humorless, unlike C.O.P.S before it, RoboCop painted a bleak picture of what's to come, focusing especially on the threats of AI, mechatronics, the evolution of crime, as well as society's responses to these threats. The first episode goes right into it by tackling both the threat of criminals becoming more efficient through the use of technology, as well as that of increasingly authoritarian robotics becoming ever more invasive in our daily lives. Other episodes dealt with more contemporary topics and issues like disabilities, terrorism, environmental damage, and dishonest news reporting, and even explored themes of identity, consciousness, and what it means to be human, all set to a backdrop of futuristic societal decay. RoboCop ran for a single season, and 10 years later a second animated adaptation was produced, RoboCop Alpha Commando, which debuted in September 1998 and produced 40 episodes. The 1994 animated series Phantom 2040 was a futuristic take on the 1930s comic strip series The Phantom, and which placed the setting of the series in the city of Metropia, once known as New York City, in the year 2040. By this time, all previous environmental disasters, together with the economic fallout of the resource wars from the early 21st century, have decimated planet Earth. The victims of these misfortunes have been forced to subsist on whatever they can scavenge on the streets, while the privileged and wealthy continue to thrive in expensive real estate developments that tower above the suffering masses. 1999 saw the debut of Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century, which took place in the crime-infested New London in the year 2103, where the frozen body of the original Sherlock Holmes is brought back to life through a means of cellular rejuvenation. His new partner, Beth Lestrade, gets him up to speed on the evolution of crime in the 20th century, referred to as the Golden Age of crime. And Holmes finds himself once again battling his rejuvenated nemesis, Professor James Moriarty, as the great detective adjusts to life and crimes in the 22nd century. And while not a kid's show, Ralph Bakshi's 1997 animated series, Spicy City, was pure cyberpunk. While only running for 6 episodes, the HBO anthology series was set in a futuristic city with a dark underbelly, and explored a number of novel technological concepts, like in the very first episode, Love is a Download, which explored the darker side of love and romance in the virtual world. Spicy City debuted over a month before South Park, and as a result can be considered the first true adults-only animated series. That concludes our tour of the earliest examples of cyberpunk themes found in cartoons and animation. And those were just some of the early, pioneering films and series that I watched and enjoyed recently. But please let us know down in the comments what other groundbreaking Japanese cyberpunk anime works you would recommend, and also maybe some early examples in Western animation that you can think of. And while we're at it, also let us know who you think treated the cyberpunk genre better, Western or Japanese animators. Please like this video if you learned something today, and feel free to share this video with any of your friends who might enjoy it. The next video is already in the pipeline and will be out soon. So until then, thank you as always for hanging out with me today, and stay tuned for more cartoon history.